back to my Arrow episode review. For those of you who've been subscribed to my channel for any period of time, you guys know that I gave up on Arrow back in April when they killed off Laurel, and I told myself I wasn't going to watch the show again, and I wasn't going to review it again, except for crossovers, which obviously tonight is a crossover. But, I started watching Season 5 after people told me, the show's improving and it's gotten a lot better. Some people over-exaggerated it and said, oh, just right back to Season 1. And I'm like, calm down. And then it's not Season 1 level, but the show has improved vastly. I still have some issues with the show, but, especially after tonight's episode, which is titled Invasion Part 3 of the 3-part DCTV crossover, this show has officially won me back over. Tonight's episode was flat out amazing. It had everything I love about Arrow in it. Great action, just great character moments, and just seeing all the characters who've passed on the show, minus, we do see a glimpse of Tommy, and we see a glimpse of Roy, and we see just seeing Laurel and, Oliver's parents, and just having the show kind of feel like, at least to me, how it kind of felt in the beginning of Season 1. It had brought back so many memories and so many emotions for me, and for this being, Arrow's 100th episode, I feel like kind of fitting for me to officially come back on this episode, but at the same time, it was a great episode, it was more of the Arrow 100 episode compared to, the Arrow crossover episode, which is fine. I understand, the way it lined up. I personally wish that they could have separated the two and had the 100th episode and then the crossover, but I still think it worked out great in the way they integrated a couple of the crossover characters, like Katie Lotz as Sarah Lance, and Brandon Routh, Ray Palmer, and how you still have elements of the crossover in the episode with with the new Team Arrow helping with the help of Cisco and Felicity and Barry and Supergirl, and they're trying to find Oliver and the rest of them who were abducted in last night's episode of The Flash. And again, I just thought tonight's episode, the crossover parts were okay. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. Just this episode again just brought back so many emotions for me, and just seeing all the characters that I loved. Susanna Thompson as Moira Queen, who it's been forever since we've seen her. We haven't seen her obviously since Slade Wilson killed her off often towards the end of Season 2. And then Jamie Sheridan as Robert Queen, who we saw obviously not a whole lot of in Season 1, but he was around a lot in the flashbacks and stuff like that. And he just seeing that, and then seeing kind of where tonight where we saw Oliver's character growth, and he really has become and even with me watching, being caught up now on the show, minus me, I still haven't watched the end of Season 4, and I don't really want to because I hated Season 4. But Oliver has gone through a lot of character development, and I do see him now as a full-fledged hero. I feel like he's finally earned that moniker of being a hero. I'm not saying he hasn't earned it in the past. I'm just saying now it's not just the actions of being a hero. It's who he is as a person, and seeing from where he started as essentially a serial killer in Season 1, and now he's at a point where he's allowing himself to be more emotional, and he's allowing himself to really express his feelings. And yes, he still has some character flaws, as any real person does, but just seeing him in this episode, especially his scenes with Laurel, and you guys know, Laurel, the killing off of Laurel was the reason why I gave up on the show in the first place. And seeing Katie Cassidy back, and I know she signed a deal with the show that she's going to be back to some capacity on. I believe she signed the same deal as John Barrowman, who portrays Malcolm Merlin, and then it was kind of cool seeing him in this episode. But Katie Cassidy did such a great job, and a lot of people didn't like the portrayal of Oliver and Laurel's relationship in Season 1. And that's fair. They didn't write it the best, and Laurel wasn't always written the best, and she was sidelined a lot and not given the best storylines, and her storylines weren't often handled the best. But the more I saw her, the more she became one of my favorite characters in the show. And in this episode, just seeing her relationship with Oliver in this episode, and even though it's a false reality, it doesn't feel kind of like with Supergirl with last year when they had the episode of the girl who had everything, and she's having that fantasy of being on Krypton and stuff, and we almost saw glimpses of it, and even then, that reality, it just felt so fake. And this is what I would have wanted in that episode, even though it's completely different shows and everything, but this is what I would have wanted, and just it feels real and it feels emotional, and like when Oliver says he loves Laurel, you believe it, and he says it several times, and to me, he's still, he makes it very clear he's still in love with Laurel, especially, like, he's not over her death. Of course he misses her, and you see him tear up at the end when he has to kind of like decide between, staying in this fake reality with a woman he loves, or go to the real world where she's gone and his parents are gone, and it's his life's a much darker thing in reality. And Stephen Amell gave honestly one of his best performances in the episode. Katie Cassidy did an amazing job, and just seeing her in this episode I thought was just so great, and I loved how they incorporated some of the crossover characters into this false reality. Because at first, like, you think it's more of like from the perspective of Oliver, but even like Sarah and Thea and Diggle and Ray and all these characters who were all introduced in Arrow finally come together, and just seeing them slowly kind of come to realize that the reality that they see is not the real world. And, obviously we see Diggle as Arrow wearing the original season 1 suit with a little bit of a suit upgrade. So we see him as, as Green Arrow, kind of like a throwback to that one episode in season 1 where Diggle threw it on. And he's worn it a couple other times as well. And just seeing him and Felicity, and having each character kind of like, when they're starting to come to the realization of, this world's fake, and and seeing the Dominators kind of like send threats to, keep them in that world. And I think one of my favorite moments of this episode, it was more of an action sequence than it was a moment, but for me, one of my favorite scenes was when all the characters were trying to escape, and the Dominators, input enemies for each of them to fight. Where, Oliver had Deathstroke, who obviously was not Manu Bennett, it was just a guy in the Deathstroke costume. Which I think, like, well, because obviously Manu Bennett has said some negative things about the show, and at the time I remember reading them, I was like, dude, you're on the show and you were paid to do a job, and you're kind of criticizing it. I think that's kind of unfair. And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, he had a fair reason to criticize the show, because that was right when the show started really getting shitty. Of course, Manu Bennett more than likely isn't coming back anytime soon, and he probably wasn't going to come back for this episode, which sucks, because I really I love his portrayal of Slade Wilson. So just seeing a random guy in the suit kind of sucked. But getting back to that scene, just Thea had Malcolm Merlin, and Sarah had Damien Dark, and Diggle had, I believe it was his brother or something he was fighting. Obviously, it wasn't the actual actor who played Andy Diggle. And you had Ray fighting one of Deathstroke's soldiers, who, and if you guys know the history of Ray in this show, that his wife was killed by one of Slade's men. So you can see how there's they have emotional ties to each of their enemies. So that's why I thought it was cool when they're all fighting their enemies, and they essentially killed their enemies, even though they didn't actually kill them. But I thought it was a cool fight scene nonetheless. But again, this episode was emotional, and that's something that I think that Arrow has really been lacking. It's at least good emotion, because they've had emotion, makes too much emotion in fucking Felicity. And you guys know, another reason why I hated the show for a long time was because of the stupid fucking Felicity relationship. I apologize for the cussing, but I did not like the Oliver and Felicity relationship at all. I'm so glad that's over and done with. Even Mark Guggenheim has come out and said he wishes he handled the relationship in season 4 better, and that it was more of a build-up and less of just like, in your face. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, and that's not exactly what he said, but he did say he wished he handled them better. And and the thing that sucks, I was a fan of them being together when they were first teasing it, and when it felt organic and real. What I didn't like is when they made Felicity whiny. They focused way too much on her, because she became less interesting of a character, and she just had to be the character to make terrible one-liners, had a terrible character and a mother, and a terrible romance with Oliver that was forced. And then they tried doing the stupid Oracle thing when they first made her Overwatch, and then they had her paralyzed, and then they brought her back from paralysis within episodes, which is completely fucking bullshit. So just, I don't know, like, that was just, I feel like I'm straying off topic because she was barely even in the episode. But I just didn't like how she was handled at all. Now, like, I still, one thing I've been annoyed with this whole crossover thing is in every single promo, she has like that line of best team up ever. And it's like, shut up, shut up, shut up. I hated that line. And when they finally said it in the last episode, I'm like, oh, that's like the worst line. It gives it the worst character. But, okay, again, I apologize for kind of going off a bit. But, with this being my comeback to reviewing Arrow, I had to bring Felicity up at some point. And I apologize for people who are fans of her. You guys can feel free to be fans of her. You know, I just don't like her, clearly. And I apologize if I offend you guys in any way. You know, I'm not trying to upset anyone or, you know, say directly, you know, oh, you guys suck for hating Felicity. You guys have every right to like Felicity. I just don't. I hate what they've done with her for the most part. She's gotten better in season 5 because they take away the focus from her and Oliver and their stupid relationship. And they made her more the character that she was in season 1 and 2, is just Oliver's friend who's there for him and there for Team Arrow. And they stopped making her whiny and they stopped focusing on her stupid romance and just... They're finally making her a likable character again. They still give her really bad dialogue and terrible lines sometimes, but she's improving. And so, I hope you guys don't take what I say and be like, "Oh, he's just a hater," blah 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 blah. That's not necessarily the case. I want more quality from the show, and that's what we're getting so far in season 5 and this episode. So, what else did I like? And I like how Thea initially, when Oliver was trying to kind of tell her, like, hey, you know, we need to get out of here, this isn't real. And then she's asking Oliver, like, why? Like, Laurel's alive, our parents are alive, like, why would you want to leave this? And Oliver just kind of tells her that, like, just, it's not real. And just the way he explained it, I can't remember exactly word for word, because I'm recording this episode a couple of hours after I've seen the episode. But I just, in that moment, you see the real emotion in Oliver, and he doesn't want to give it up. He has, but he doesn't want to, but he has to. And that's, I think, the ultimate takeaway from this episode is that Oliver didn't want to leave this reality. He wanted to be married to Laurel. He wanted to be the guy that she is in love with. He doesn't want to be Oliver that he kind of has been. He wants to be better. And I think that's, to me, should be motivation for him for the rest of the season to be better. And in this episode, I think I've seen more lightness in this episode in Oliver's character than I have in any other episode in the entire show. And that's where I think this episode for me is honestly one of my favorite episodes of the show. Even though it is the crossover stuff aside, it was a great episode. And to mention the crossover stuff, obviously it was cool bringing in Barry and Cisco and Supergirl into the show. One thing I really hated was, you know, Wild Dog. Okay, all these recruits, I've been back and forth. Okay, Wild Dog is stupid. He's not, like, or at least they don't write him well. It's just like they go back and forth on him being a cool, interesting character to him making stupid decisions. Like in tonight's episode, he's like, oh, you're here, and then the aliens came when he's talking to Supergirl, and it's like, no, she's here to help beat the aliens. It's not like she came and then the aliens came, you idiot. And then there's the whole metahuman thing. It's like, you literally work with a metahuman. Oliver has worked with metahumans. Why is it all of a sudden metahumans are an issue? How are you not aware of who the Flash is? Like, just Wild Dog. He's just. And then Curtis is a character, like, as Mr. Terrific, he's okay. I wish they'd do more with his character as Mr. Terrific, but I feel like ever since season 4, they've just made him to be like the male equivalent of Felicity, and they give him such terrible dialogue. And every time he makes a joke, and it's not even funny at all. Like, I want to like Curtis. Actor, I think he does an okay job. I mean, it's the CW. He's not the best actor. I mean, he does, again, just okay. I can't give him any more credit than that. But I hate the dialogue they give him sometimes. In tonight's episode, when he's making some jokes, I'm like, dude, stop it. And then Ragman, he was a little more interesting tonight when he was one who kind of deduced, you know, that the alien language is kind of based off of, you know, Hebrew language from the Old Testament and the Bible, which I thought was kind of cool. Ragman, he's a character who doesn't have a whole ton of depth, but he's okay. Visually, I wish they could do more with him than just like, with his rags. I mean, I understand the CW, and I feel like most of their budget goes to every other show. But he's an okay enough character. And then their version of Artemis, who wasn't even in tonight's episode, shocker. And then, you know, we find out that she's working with Prometheus and stuff like that. Like, I hate Artemis. I just, these recruits, just other than Ragman and kind of Curtis, I don't care for these recruits at all. They can kill off a couple of them, and I wouldn't even care. This version of Artemis is going to get killed, because she's not even the Artemis I even wanted. because I want Artemis Croc and not whatever this stupid Evelyn person is who's gonna end up being the bad guy anyway. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, and that's kind of been the theme of this. The theme of this review is going off on tangents on characters I probably shouldn't be going off on. What else? Sorry, I'm just going through the notes I took throughout the episode. Honestly, I think that is it. I did like, Nate from, or Steel from Legends saving the team in the Wave Rider at the end of the episode. That was cool. And I'm really excited to see how this whole 4-part crossover was wrapped up. It's definitely not what I would have wanted in the crossover. I mean, in terms of just the crossover, last night's Flash was flat out amazing. One of my favorite episodes of The Flash in terms of crossovers. And this episode had some cool crossover-y stuff, but not enough to make it that interesting. Obviously, the whole 100th Arrow episode stuff, that was the best part of the episode. But with that episode and Supergirl, it was great singular episodes for their respective shows. As part of the crossover, people are probably going to be let down in certain aspects. So, and I think that's fair, but at the same time, I'm pleased enough as a fan because I'm getting good episodes overall. Maybe not the best crossover episodes, but good episodes overall to where, I'm going to forget the show. I'm not, going to take it as, I shouldn't be liking this because the crossover sucks. No, that's not it at all for me. So yeah, I think with that being said, that's going to be it for me for my return to reviewing Arrow. I mean, we'll see if I review the mid-season finale or not. I'll decide throughout the next week or so or whatever. So what did you guys think of this tonight's episode of the crossover? What were your guys' favorite moments from the 100th episode of Arrow? Send your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for my review of the finale to this crossover tomorrow night. Mid-season finale more than likely next week, and for every other TV show I review as well, including Supergirl, Flash, Legend of Tomorrow, and for those of you who may watch my Star Wars Rebels reviews, I think I'm going to give up reviewing that show just because, first of all, it's hard enough watching that show on Saturday nights, let alone reviewing it Saturday nights, and honestly, no one really watches my videos of those anymore, so that's where it's a little tricky. But thank you guys for watching my video, and until next time, have a good one.